Hello, friends. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, listeners, viewers around the world. This is My name is Sivam Velaidam and Voice of Men 360 Open Up. This is a special talk show every week on Sundays from 10 to 10:30. We bring people from around the world and we want to hear their stories, especially on the perspective or boys or men's issues or challenges, overcomes anything they can talk about it. There's no age limit or gender limitations. Any people, any walk of life, they can speak about it. And Voice of Men is a not-for-profit organization based in Canada, and also it is part of International Men's Day. International Men's Day, some of you guys already may know, it has over 20 years of history, and then nearly so far about 90 countries joined, and then they are taking initiatives on a regular basis. So let me give you some six pillars of International Men's Day, what they are focusing, and we will go from there. The first one is to promote a positive male role model, not just a movie stars and sportsmen, but everyday working class men who are living decent, honest lives. Second, to celebrate men's positive contributions to society, community, family, marriage, childcare, and the environment. Third one, to focus on men's health and well being, social, emotional, physical, and spiritual. Fourth one, to highlight discrimination against men in areas of social services, social attitudes and expectations, and law to improve gender relations and promote gender equality. That's a fifth one. Sixth one, to create a safer, better world where people can be safe and grow to reach their full potential. These are the six pillars we are focusing on. We are working with International Men's Day Voice of Men 360. So we have a special guest today, and then I want to thank everybody before I go. I welcome him because your support, your contributions to Voice of Men or the well-being of boys and men, it's very, very crucial and very important to all of us. So let me welcome Ramesh Ramkumar from South Africa.
Hello,
Hello.
Sivam.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good, Sivam. Thank you for this opportunity to share the message of what I've been creating for a better part of my life now. So it's a great privilege. Thank you.
Thank you. It is a true honor to have you here. I just want to ask you, give us a brief introduction about yourself, and then I will ask, go into the questions. So, please.
Okay, sure. I was born 64 years ago on a little farm in Durban, which is a town in South Africa. And growing up there was really great for me, at least for the first 10 years of my life. And then things didn't go too well after that. When I think back on my life now, prior to 10 years, prior to the first, prior to that 10th year, my life was really just one of a carefree childhood where I ran in the farm as if my entire body was shrouded by light and my feet didn't seem to touch the ground when I ran. So that's the picture I have of me as a child growing up on a farm in South Africa. But one night when I was 10 years old, I heard some sounds and it got me up and I had to look, and it seemed to be coming from where my father's room was. And I just went there and I saw some violence happening. And for the first time in my life, I found that something that is common, something that happens so often, and it just happens in the heat of the moment because that's the way this worked out at that night. But as a child growing up, suddenly I was faced by a trauma which really changed my entire life. Where I saw my family as a unit, I suddenly saw that now there's a father and a mother, and they are separate. And I, being more sensitive as a child, chose to be with my mother on her side and look at my father as someone who really I started to grow to detest as a child. And that was very unfortunate because there were sides to him that was really fantastic. But I couldn't see that because of my choice then. And I decided to be aligned to my mother. And unfortunately, my mother, in this energy dynamics between the two of them, was the weaker one. She chose to be kind of like the doormat in this relationship. And in choosing to align myself with her, I also became a very weak personality. I grew up sickly as a child after that. I was bronchial. I had serious bronchial problems. I was very weak in my body, in so much so that I was hunched over with bronchial problems and I couldn't breathe very well. I was very skinny. By the time I was a teenager, my skin was crawling with psoriasis. And by the time I was 25, my appendix burst as I was being wheeled into surgery. My fingers were gnarling over with arthritis. And I used to use thick lens glasses to peer through. Severe headaches and all sorts of other diseases that started to set in. And really, I couldn't understand how I'm ever going to get healthy again. And life was really miserable. Having aligned myself with my mother, I found that the word altruistic, which means put other people's feelings before yours. So I would put other people's feelings before mine and do things for them so that they will acknowledge me and then I would feel better about myself. So that was in order to be with somebody, I ended up being married early. And that ended up as a disaster as well 10 years later, because I found that everything that I was trying to avoid from my father being a very strong personality, everything that I thought I don't want to be, actually I knew how to be. And I tried very hard in my marriage then to make it work. And somehow that didn't. And eventually got divorced. And at that time, not understanding how to manage life in general, all I wanted to do was to just walk off the first cliff I came to. So I tried several times. Thankfully, I was unsuccessful at that too. How to manage life in general, all I wanted to do was to just walk off the first. Oh, now I can hear my own sound, my own voice reverberating. Are you
No,
okay
go
there,
ahead.
Sivam?
Yeah.
Is it all
That's
okay?
fine. Yeah.
Yes? Okay. So reaching a point where in my life I thought, what do I do next? I'm confused. Everybody around me doesn't make sense. The people that were supposed to be my role models were sick, were disgruntled. And me being a parent now and not even knowing how to be one, having a wife and not knowing how to be a proper husband because there wasn't any role models that I could follow. I tried very hard, but eventually, through circumstances, I left my family, I left my children crying in different homes, and I ran away from South Africa. I ended up backpacking for 3 years, plus minus. I would return to South Africa occasionally, but found myself back again traveling. This is what actually saved my life in its own way. They say travel either makes you a fool or helps you to grow wise. I realized that I was living my life with my nose too close to the black part of my life. My vision was very limited, and that's all I saw. And when I left my life and my country, and I started backpacking, especially in the East. I was searching for answers. I was trying to find a way to understand what it means to be human in a troubled and diseased world of human beings. And as much as I stayed in ashrams in Pune in India, and then in Thailand in the north, in Ubon, with Buddhist monks in the forest, and did so many types of meditation, learned different cultures and different alternate health modalities, I was still sick. I wasn't getting better. I found that the biggest disease on the planet actually at that time for me, and still is, the biggest disease is confusion. And that confusion where one is saying this, another that, and a third one, oh, don't worry about those two, do this, and you'll get better. And that kind of confusion really, I ran around in a circle. It was like I'm going around with a begging bowl, never big enough for what it is I need to help me in my life. And I got very disgruntled, very disappointed. So eventually I started to rave and rant with a higher wisdom, or God, by whatever name we'd like to call this amazing entity by, and ask what it is I'm looking for. You know, where's the answers to all my questions? I have so many questions. And what is it that will put my life right? And in my crying out, eventually I would go to sleep and wake up in the morning, and somehow some answers would surface. And one morning in particular, it was like this little voice in my head saying, you're looking for the truth. And I thought, okay, that makes sense, because it's the truth that is meant to set us free from our bondage to pain, misery, and suffering, and so on. So I looked for the truth, and as I say in my book, Being Human, I call it man's world. I looked for truth in man's world, and I found there that, well, everybody speaks the truth. You put on the radio, television, you read a book, a magazine, you listen to friends, neighbors, parents, they're all speaking the truth about how to be okay and how to live a great life as a human being. But statistically, 95% of the world's population lives in disease, misery, and medication dependency. In many countries, 1 in 2, 1 in 3 marriages are failing. There's disgruntlement. Children, for the first time in human history, medical science is saying that the young of our species may not outlive their parents. And there's 40% increase amongst children with cancer. And I thought, okay, so where in this world is the truth? I can't find it. It's so vague. This life is so huge. There's so many things to it. Where is the truth? And I would fight again with and rave and rant with this higher wisdom we call God, and ask, so where is this truth? And eventually, the voice in my head said, the truth is in your blood. And I said, okay, that makes sense, because now the blood never lies. If you want to know what's wrong with a person's body, when you go to the hospital, they can take a sample of your blood and give you a diagnosis of what's going on. The blood never lies. The truth is that which flows in your blood, in your veins. And I thought, okay, it's fair enough. That sounds like a great idea, but how is it going to help me get better? How is it going to change my life? You know? And so for 30 years now, I've started to refine information and simplify everything. So my entire life is about simplification, because I believe that in simplicity is clarity, and clarity is power. And that clarity is the opposite of the confusion, where confusion is diffusion. It really dissipates one's personal power. And if I can get clear and simple about my life in a way that I can manage it better. So over the last 30 years, that's what I've been doing. And now at 64, I can say, being a grandparent, now I have 6 grandchildren, and only now really am I fit at 64 to be a good parent. And only now am I able to understand how to be a stand-up man, to be a male that is worthy to have a wife, and
Ramesh, can you hear
to
me?
honor this wife.
Ramesh? Hello, Ramesh?
And I say that because I couldn't understand so many things about myself before. How do I have my life for 5?
Sorry, friends. Maybe we had to wait. He will be joining very soon. So please be with me. So in the mean,
You're having trouble. Are you
hello,
able to
Ramesh.
hear me now, Shivam?
Yeah, yeah. So please, yeah, continue. Little bit. Just I just want to, just go back a few minutes earlier, and then
Yes, I
just
think we got connected.
yeah, we lost the important important part of your life, the one you are sharing. So please, you know, retell the lines.
All right. Yes. Um, yes. It's not easy if we don't have the kind of life that we live in, what I call man's world.
Yeah.
Everybody's very busy and not much family oriented anymore. So, as I say, at 64, oh boy, did we get disconnected again? All
No, no,
right,
no.
at 64, at 64, only now can I tell you that I'm worthy to be a good human being, worthy to be a good husband, a good male, a good man. But I'm a grandparent now, and that's all I have now is to share the wisdom of my life, of having gone through so much of trauma, so much of heartache to overcome my diseases, my mental, emotional, and physical diseases, and to sit here as a human being where I can look at myself and say, I'm happy with me. And now to create that and to help other people with my everyday work at my clinic here in Westville in South Africa, where people come and stay with me from all over the world for sometimes 7 days, which is a common and popular period of time, or up to 21 or 30 days, where people come and stay, and I teach them how to reset their lives, not just on a mental level, but on a level where we go as deep as the bowel, as the gut, as your large intestine, into your blood, into your cells, through to your heart, your emotions, through to the brain, which is the mental part of ourselves, and understanding how the brain works, and then to the lofty heights of the soul. So I have 5 principles of being human, and each of those 5 principles has 4 steps to it. And the first one has to do with self-mastery, and or I sometimes refer to it as contemporary spiritual enlightenment. And of course, when we hear the word spiritual enlightenment, somehow we think of it as some form of religion or so, but it's not. Actually, my religion is being human, if I have to say that I have a religion. I just have role models like Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad, Krishna. And I just choose all the good things that wise people have to share with me now. And I discard any other information that leads to confusion. So my first principle of being human is, if I have to observe you now, Shivam, I observe you as 4 distinct aspects of being human. And if I can help somebody understand these 4 distinct aspects and how this works, that becomes the formula of how I can live my life and the foundation of my being human. So the first thing is that I observe you as an energy entity. That energy entity is often referred to as the soul or spirit or power, or the energy frequency of love, joy, peace, happiness. And that's basically what our true identity is. So in a way of sharing this with others, I would say that I am this energy, this soul or this spirit that is here visiting on the earth plane. It's as if there is this amazing God or wisdom or intelligence or omnipotent force that creates all this planet, that says, go my children, bits of what it is that I am, that creates everything, come and visit an earth plane. And for that, you'll be given the gift of a physical body with which to experience the gross sensuality of being human. But since God helps those who help themselves, you'll be endowed with a device called a brain with which to think with. And you have free will to think whatever it is you want to. But you'll become responsible for the thoughts by having corresponding emotions. So if I recap that, I am this energy, this soul or this spirit that has a brain, the neuron cells of the brain, which I associate with to produce thought. And dependent on the kind of thought I have, I release a neurochemical which floods my bloodstream and make me feel a certain way. And then I have a behavior from that on a physical level. So I am thinking, feeling, and I'm behaving. That is the sequence of the creation of my life's experiences. In other words, there is this sort of sequence from top down, from nothing to something, from the metaphysical to the physical, from the subtle to the gross aspect of my being human. So if I can live my life or practice, which is what I do all the time now, I practice to observe myself as a spirit, as an energy entity of entity of peace, joy, love, and wisdom that is part of the entirety that I am associating with this brain and I'm thinking. So I keep checking in on myself, what it is I am thinking. And for that, I use both hands, my right hand and my left hand. And the right hand, I can suggest you use it as the side where you'd say, let's just say God, whatever name you'd like to attach to God on that side. And on the left-hand side, the opposite of what God is, let's just say the devil or an evil force. So on the right hand is light, left hand is dark, good, evil, light, and stress, joy, and disease. So the right-hand side is all the good things that you want to aspire towards. And the left-hand side is all the things, the misery, pain, the suffering that you want to avoid. So now each thought that you create or I create I am a soul associating with the neuron cells of my brain to think with. What am I thinking, right hand or left hand? So if it is that I'm thinking on the right hand side, then on the right hand side, then on that side, because of the quality of thought, it will release a neurochemical that floods my bloodstream and makes me feel relaxed and joyous and peaceful. But if I have a negative, angry thought, it puts in a different type of chemical into my bloodstream that makes me angry or depressed or distressed. So I'm a biological, biochemical machine. And I have three components that help me to visit this earth plane: the mental, the emotional, and the physical. So I am thinking. What am I thinking? Right hand or left hand? How am I speaking? Right hand or left hand? How am I feeling? How am I behaving? So now I am constantly self-analyzing, constantly checking in on myself. And this is what the wise old men will call the process of self-analysis, or the process of self-realization, which is what the masters would want us to do, to self-realize. So when I can self-realize, I can take responsibility for my thought, right hand or left hand, positive or negative, good, bad. Then I can take responsibility for how I speak, feel, and behave as a result of me starting with thought, word, and deed. So if that's the highest form of self-responsibility and the highest form of becoming human all over again and understanding the sequence with which I create the life's experiences, then I don't actually have to leave my household, my home, and go away and sit, for example, in the Himalayas with my legs crossed like pretzels, appearing holier than thou, with perhaps streaks of ashes and beads and so on. I can learn to bloom where it is I am planted, just like any one of us. We can learn to become enlightened in our homes, in the corporate world. So that word enlightened now is a little frightening. I love words and I love to simplify them. Enlightened means to know. Enlightened is consciousness, information, to know. If I fell over unconscious, the first thing I'll do when I get up out of that unconscious state into consciousness is ask, what happened? Inform me, because when I was unconscious, I didn't know. So enlighten me, give me information. So light is information, enlightened. So enlightenment, spiritual enlightenment, means spirit must get enlightened, must know how to use these three instruments: its brain, its emotions, and its physical body. Because from birth, I didn't know how to use these three instruments wisely. So when the soul that arrives in the physical realm as a baby starts to learn how to use its brain, it gets taught by people around it how to use it. And in those first 7 years of being a child, the neural pathways, our habits, our neural circuits are set in our brain. And the Jesuits, they say, give us a baby from 0 to 7 and we'll show you the man. So now our young men are being trained by a society that when they become adults, who they are as adults has been trained from 0 to 7, especially in those years when it's called the hypnotic years. Hypnosis is receiving a piece of information and believing it's the truth. And in those years, we are like sponges receiving information. Now imagine we as men, when we do not think, speak, feel, and behave in this sequence with consciousness, start to be with our wives in a manner that is disrespectful and disregarding how they feel as women, because as men we are seen as the patriarchal leader of our tribe. Our personal tribe is our is our wife, who's supposed to be our equal in this partnership, in making decisions and so on. But despite that, I'm the patriarch leader. I'm the power in this, seen to be the power. When there's a crisis, they will look to me to lead my personal tribe out of this crisis. And my personal tribe, of course, is my family, my wife, my children, then my extended family, my brothers, my sister, my parents, and so on. But I have grown up to be a man and the alpha male in the tribe of my family. So in those first 7 years, when we do not speak and we do not think clearly and we do not speak and behave in a proper manner, we are already training our children to be what we have become. So hereditary disease is what monkeys see monkeys do. It's something that we hand over. It's a living legacy. This pain, misery, and suffering that we have learned to incorporate into our life, we now just hand over to the next generation. But it seems like it gets worse with each generation as we live our lives in ignorance. I mean, 2,500 years ago, one wise person, Buddha, he said, all misery comes from ignorance. Today, in a world of information overload, the world is sick from ignorance. I mean, there's a pandemic going on right now where we are all afraid of a virus which will eat us up. And I can tell you quite frankly, I'm not afraid of that virus. I will actually eat it for breakfast, lunch, or dinner because I've brought my body to a point where my immune system is very strong and it can't attack my cells. And that is something we can teach. And I'm prepared to sit in another session with you and take you as deep as blood and the cells and the bowel and teach our young men and adults and grandparents how to become strong and powerful leaders, not just in the mind. But as I go back and recall that I said that the truth is in the blood, the truth is that which flows in the blood in your veins. There's a formula for how you and I and every human on the planet, whether it's from the north, south, east, west, whether it's black, white, blue, or comes from Timbuktu, every human makes their own blood. And there's a formula that I can provide you with of how we make that blood on a daily basis. And then we are told, put on a mask, practice social distancing, wash your hands, sanitize, spray, and take care of your immune system. That's it. Take care of your immune system. Okay, here's my nose, here's my eye, here's my ear. Where is your immune system? Ask anyone in this 8 billion of people on the planet, and 99.9% doesn't know what their immune system is. And that's the reason we're being attacked by a virus. So I would like to explain to our people listening today what is the immune system and how we produce it every day of our lives. And if we don't do it right, if we don't work that formula right, we are weakening ourselves and opening up the door for invasion into our private space within our bodies, the sacred space in the temple of the soul. You see. So my story over the last 30 years has been refined and refined and refined to provide these 5 principles. The first one I just exposed in a little bit. I can talk about that first principle for a week and break it down so that I incorporate science and biology with common sense and esoteric and the divinity that we are as souls, to simplify it and to take us away from this jungle that we lost in and to stand here in our own power as men and women of power and grace to lead our families today. So one thing I can tell you is that if we have to become enlightened, which is I have just 2 principles in life now. My first principle, which is my primary principle. When I say I have 2 principles, I don't mean that I discount the other 5. story, I have these two principles that I live my life. It's a personal principle, besides the five that are there for being human, which is yours and mine and everybody else's. These two principles are personal. The first one is my primary principle, or my primary purpose. And this primary purpose is for me to every day, every moment of my life, check in on how I think, right hand or left hand. And I can tell you, nearly all my life I lived on the left hand side. This was my default setting, that I lived here on the left with the dark side of life. And I had to struggle like crazy for the 5 years recently to find answers for my new book, Mother Earth, Father Sky, a story of timeless intimacy, that I had to cry for 5 years of my life, tears of pain from 2012 to 2017, where I went into the darkest times to find answers for the book. And all I could come up in that 5 years, especially, was these two hands. And I sat there, and it's as if day and night I started to look into my life. And with the pain and the trauma of seeing how I used to be on the left-hand side, this became where I saw that I was with the dark side, with the negative side. This was my default setting, that I was thinking, speaking, feeling, and behaving a lot of times on this side. And to break these patterns and to move to the right-hand side, it took a lot of willpower. And therefore, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the brain and what willpower is, because we have to break open the subject matter in a way we can understand it. So look at the brain, the human brain. There is the ancient brain. It's the large part of the brain, and the brainstem going down the spinal canal and spreading out throughout the body as nerves and wiring system. So here's my huge brain, but on the frontal lobe, we over the past 2 million years or so, and especially in recent times, we have grown a prefrontal lobe, which is a little different from other animals, that sets us apart. And this prefrontal lobe or cortex, the prefrontal cortex, that is where consciousness exists. Even if you open up the skull, there's an impression here like a third eye on the brain. And if you closed your eyes now and tried to imagine me, you'd imagine me from this part of your forehead. So that is where consciousness exists. And if you think about it, it's like a little part of the brain. It's a 40-bit processor, if you think of it as a computer. Now, this is engaging consciously with everything around me. So from the time I was born and I started to look, I had to know what danger is. So whenever I found what danger is, it would go immediately into my ancient brain. Are we okay with sound?
Yeah. It's a
Okay,
leather
so
jacket. It's okay. It's okay.
so the bigger part of my brain, and I always made a mistake. I thought my mind thinks, but the mind does not think. It's the brain that thinks. So the first part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, is the part where consciousness exists, of willpower, and the rest of the brain is a subconscious mind. So when the conscious brain picks up information and works it and thinks about it, it creates a neural circuit which now establishes itself as a file in my brain, that when I see this pen, immediately I know it's a pen because I have a recording in my brain that tells me that it is a pen. So that filing cabinet has been growing in my brain from the time I was born, and especially the 7 years of my life, where we get established in neural circuits in that subconscious mind, which runs our life, our personality, our habits, and everything else that we are as a human being is in there, stored. So now when I speak, you will reference it immediately to the subconscious mind and take out that file, open it, and you'll reference it and have a kind of response that might say, oh, he's speaking sense, and it puts good chemicals into your bloodstream, and you're relaxed, and you think, okay, I'm receptive to more information. Or you may have a decision based on what you receive consciously, and you reference it to your subconscious, and you open up your file and say, that guy is talking nonsense. I don't agree with him. And you put different chemicals into your bloodstream, and your fists go like that, and you want to now get aggressive or defensive about your own opinions. So we're constantly engaging with our conscious brain and referencing to subconscious. But the conscious mind or brain is just a small bit, it's 40-bit processor. And the subconscious is a 40 million bit processor. That's the storage. So now every time we have to think, we drag it from the consciousness and reference it there. And if you have bad left-hand side programs in your subconscious, and you're living your life from that negative programming, now you have to use your small computer, your 40-bit, to change a 40 million bit, which is now a million times bigger than this one. You have to use this small computer to rewrite the programs in the big computer. And that's very difficult to do for any person. How do you change it? Because these programs are firmly entrenched. And that is what the problem is, because as children, we get taught a certain way. There's a system. And that system teaches us how to be in the world we live in. Those programs are entrenched there. Now, those habits that are there run a person's life. That is the story of who Shivam is. That is the story of who Ramesh is. That is the story of every human being. And that story actually becomes our false identity. It's an acquired identity, and it's often referred to as even the ego that lives there. And I lived my life on the left-hand side from this negative programs that were there. And I took 5 years, especially focused and concentrated, to break old neural pathways, to reset my neural circuits in my filing cabinet. And I had to engage consciousness for that. And that became my primary purpose. I have 5 principles of being human, but 2 purposes in life. Primary purpose is to use my small computer to rewrite the bad programs in my big computer and live on the right-hand side, to make right-hand side my default setting. So that is my primary purpose in life. My secondary purpose in life is to do everything else I have to do as a human being from the vantage point of me as a soul having a human experience. So I, on my primary purpose, I am soul using my brain to think. What is it I'm thinking? Right hand or left hand? Positive or negative? Good or bad? Light or dark? I have to keep checking. Now, in my book, one of the characters asks, so how often should I be doing this exercise of checking my brain, right hand or left hand? And my answer was, as often as you think. So this depends on what you want. If you want to live on the right-hand side, if you want to be clean brain, to be able to control your thoughts, then constantly checking, oh, I'm having that thought, it's a bad one, I'm on the left-hand side. Oh, I'm here now and the programs are running so fast that I have no control over it, which was the case in my life. So I started to chant on the right-hand side, I'm peace, I'm joy, I'm love, I'm your child, God, hold me in your hand, keep me safe. And the moment I stopped here and I got tired and I fell over, this one would start, oh, and it's old stories about the program. And this actually started because my relationship with my wife broke down in 2012. And this brain would start asking, where is she? Why did we break up? What happened? Okay. So I had to fight over good over evil, light over dark, joy over stress. All was here in the brain. And I had to use this small computer to reprogram this big one. And those 5 years were pretty pretty painful years. But I'm glad that I had to go through it, that I found a way to simplify it and understand why my life was the way it was and how the circuits in my brain were running my life for me subconsciously. And now, from a conscious point of view, I'm able to see clearly how it is I do and what it is I do and how I work with other people. Prior to this time, when I wrote my book, obviously this one, Being Human, which is quite a beautiful read and is a bestseller. Prior to this, when I went around the countryside and in different locations doing my talks and seminars and on the radio and other media, people would think that I was really quite an amazing human being. But I realized that I was a fake messiah. I was okay on some levels, but on the deepest part of myself, I was just fake. I was troubled with all my old programs. And now only at 64, I feel like I'm more authentic. I have changed how my brain is configured, and I think and I speak and I feel and I behave differently. So I'm still on that journey. I'm still constantly on that journey. I know there's still quite a way to go, but I'm so much different from who I used to be. And it is up to us, each one of us, what is it we want out of our life? If we want to be master of our brain, right hand, left hand, where am I? Where am I? And if you're troubled so badly and you're in pain and you're in misery and suffering, then go to your right hand side and stand there with your creator, whatever name you like to call God by, and start chanting. Make a noise that is louder than the noise of the pain. And with time, you'll recreate your programs and you'll start releasing the relevant neurochemicals into your bloodstream, and you'll start feeling how you are chanting. Because in the beginning, it will just be an empty noise. You have to fake it till you make it. So
Ramesh,
that is, yes?
yeah, sorry to interrupt. I want to get some out of it from you before we leave, because it's a quite different, very interesting, very unique journey that you went through. Many challenges. It's a totally different experience for our listeners, for me especially. I want to ask you something. Can you talk about your relationship between you and your father? And the other
Yes.
thing is how, as a growing boy, as a growing young man, what was the challenges you went through? Of course, you mentioned already, but from speaking point of view, from looking at as a boy or as a man perspective, how do you overcome or
Yes.
challenges?
When I look back on my life now, growing up, after that fateful night, which I repeated in my life when I was married too, when I got frustrated, it ended up in me slapping my wife at that time. And I realized that these are the trauma we carry around, the baggage, and it replays itself out in our lives as adults. Growing up, I detested my father. I didn't want to be like him. But in not wanting to be like that, that's all I knew. It gets imprinted into the brain, into the subconscious. So as much as I thought I want to be different, somehow deep down inside me, I didn't know what that difference is. So, but now when I look back, and I did recreate my relationship with my father before he passed on about 16 years ago. When I started to see, when I started changing over these years, I started to see that he had many good qualities. He was a very powerful leader. He was very quick and decisive. And there are many things that he shared with us and he dealt as lessons to us as children, me being the eldest of 5 children, that I still have today in my life. And I'm so grateful for that. Now when I remember my father, it is with utmost love and respect. But for so much of my life, it was almost a kind of hatred, if I don't like using that word, but I'm struggling to find another word to replace it with. But growing up, I couldn't see that he was quick in thinking, that he led us and he did the best he could, whatever he knew, to raise us. I mean, he worked very hard. We were poor. Our plate, whenever we finished eating, if there was a grain of rice left on it, he'd make us eat it again. Go back to our plate and eat it, because he said, you can't waste that. I worked very hard for it. You don't waste anything. And up to now in my life, I live in a way that I never waste something. I'm very careful about how I do anything I do. And there were so many other qualities which I can see in myself now, which are good qualities that he displayed. When I was 50 years old and his health started deteriorating, he was very stubborn and set in his ways. When I started changing and I became healthy, I tried to share with him this information, but his neurocircuits, that thing, his programmings were very set in his ways about how he wanted to live his life. And although he did some of the things I asked him to do, it was only at age 50, when I was 50, I remember walking with him for the first time in my life on the beach, just him and me. It was a little awkward, but I broke through that barrier and I spoke to him and he spoke to me. And for the first time, something that I would have liked to do, hold his hand as a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old and walk on the beach and ask him questions about life. I did that when I was 50 and he was about 70 or so. And when he died at 74, I was treating him and I was giving him a massage on a regular basis. That morning when he passed away, I think it was the 9th of November, just exactly a week before my book can be published or launched, I was scheduled to go and see him and massage him and just attend to him, because I was doing everything for him at that stage. I remember before that I had arranged, I would organize holidays for him and my mother regularly. For Father's Day, I gave him a beautiful car. I did a lot of things for him when I realized that he did the best he could for me. And that was all he knew how to do. And I couldn't blame him, because that's the way he grew up, knowing truth for him. So that morning I was scheduled to go to give him a massage and just be with him. And I got a phone call saying that he had passed on. And I remember my father now with peace, with joy, with love. That fateful night, 10 years, when I was 10 years old, is a memory still, but it's now replaced with more beautiful ones. Maybe other fathers may not have changed enough for us to be able to say good things about them. I have redeemed myself too, and I live my life as an example for others to follow. I have a huge number of clients that come to me for treatment, and I'm seen in a particular way, and I know that I have a great influence in people's lives. Maybe next time I'll share with you what treatment we do and how I
Ramesh,
have saved many, many people's lives.
I just want to quickly, before go to the next question, I just want to have a quick question on the um, father's memory. When we look at them, it doesn't matter any age group or anything. When you look at them, we always blame on them because it's easier to blame them. But we don't know what they went through or what their father went through, like your father, your great grandfather, or even great great grandfather. It's not like from one person. It's a whole lot of chain reaction, or it's more than one person, right? So have you had a chance to talk about about his life, or Uh, have you come across, how was his life, and then because of that, something like that?
Yes, of course. Him growing up, he was also the eldest son for his father. And my grandfather was a very strong, stern person as well, also an alpha male and leader of his tribe. I still remember him. Very wise man. He had come from, his descendants were from India. And so um, he was very harsh in his own way as well, very authoritarian. They love, they never hugged one another. My father never hugged us growing up. So, yeah, he had a tough life, and he carried that forward to me, and I became someone whose life was also filled with all that kind of baggage. But as I speak to you now, and I speak to anybody else who might be listening, it is up to you and it is up to me to break that chain of what we hand down to others as pain and trauma. Right now, we can change it. We can start to become more conscious. It's why it's so important to me, the brain and how we use the brain wisely, because that is the instrument which contains our thoughts and our memories. And if we can now reestablish a new way of fighting the old established neural circuits, that I am thinking, what am I thinking? How am I feeling? How am I behaving? Take self responsibility. Enlightenment simply means spirit must learn to use these three instruments, its mind, emotion, and physical body. And when it knows how to do that, then spirit is enlightened to be here as a human being in the physical realm. So whether we like it or not, primary purpose is everybody's purpose. Primary purpose for you, for me, is to live from this perspective of soul having a human experience, clean brain, clean heart, clean bowel, blood, and cells, and to become a human being that is now broken that chain that is handed down and now starting to share wisdom in a different, simplified, yet so deep and yet so profound that we don't have to wait like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The pinnacle is self-actualization. The base is where we fight for our food, shelter, and love, recognition, and self-actualization. Reverse that, change it around, inverse it, and and
Ram- Ramesh,
self-actualization.
hello, Ramesh.
Yes, hello,
Yeah. Okay. So can
hello.
you anything particularly any incident or anything from your client point of view? The experience. Some like you served or you helped a lot of people, but in those times or in those number of clients, you come across very challenging cases. Can you talk about specifically just one or two, like how did they, especially specifically, I'm asking about men's, either in the early 30s or married middle-aged man, how did they
Yes,
uh, actually, and then how did they come out from that through your medical or, your help?
yes. You see, so many men today that I work with are really struggling with their physical health. And when your body is sick and your blood, which is supposed to have a pH of 7.4 alkalinity, has become acidic, your biochemical internally, this makes it possible so that these people will not have a good relationship with their immediate people in their families, their spouse and their children. Imagine internally when you're not feeling well, how are you going to behave externally? So when my work is with with men in particular, it is about cleaning out their entire body. It is about starting with the gut where we do colonics. We take out the rubbish. Then I teach four things that make the blood. One, lower lip. Two, upper lip, nose. and forehead. I teach them how to eat, drink, breathe, and think according to cellular requirements and how these four things actually make their blood. And if they make the blood clean and it's beautiful, then it's feeding their brain. It makes them easier to be able to converse, to relate, and to have better and more beautiful relationships. So in order to create better relationships for these men with their families, with their wife and their children, I clean their bodies so that their brain can work easier and make them strong and healthy, and their lives start changing from inside out. Because when people are sick and they're acidic inside, they can't help themselves but shout and be angry with others. Imagine somebody has gout, their toe, and they're being gnawed with pain. How can they be loving? How can they treat their children well when they've got high blood pressure, diabetes, when they have headaches, dementia, stress? So I cleaned out their entire system. Today I had 3 people checking out. In the last 3 days, when they were with me, whatever we were removing from the liver, the gallbladder, which we take out physically, remove through a treatment, we take photos of that and we WhatsApp it to them, and they're shocked what comes out of the body and what we take out. Before we start treatment and when we finish, I take a drop of blood, I put it under my microscope, and on the computer screen, they look at what their blood looks like.
Hmm.
And then the chart, you see what good blood looks like and what toxic blood looks like. And look at the blood, it's living on the screen, and you look at it and you can see why that person is going to be angry, why his relationships are not right. So my work is never a superficial one. For 30 years, I've refined information and went so deep to the cell and to this blood that I can't go beyond that in dealing with people. So you come with me to me with anxiety, depression, anger, dysfunctional family life, and so on, then I say, okay, let's step back now and clean your body. Start talking about how you function on the inside, how you're eating, drinking, breathing. You're supposed to breathe 9,000 liters of oxygen per day. You're breathing only one third, about 3,000 liters. What's it going to do to your brain? How are you going to think properly? And I teach breathing techniques. Pipes and tubes have to be clean inside. It's full with mucus. So can you see my work takes you to a place where we build new bodies for people to live in. I help people grow younger because I can assure you, when you are sick, everything else outside yourself is not good. Good health is not everything, but without it, everything else is nothing. So that's where I start, in the depths of the bowel and the blood and the cells.
Very, very interesting. I mean, it is very true. I just want to ask
So
you two
perhaps the
things.
next time we can make an arrangement.
Um, the first book, the one being human. Just briefly, couple of lines. Can you touch on that? Can you explain what is it about? What it is for the viewers, or even what did you share on that book?
Ah, yes. It, it's called Being Human, Unearthing Wisdom to Live Disease, Misery, and Medicine Free. It captures my story about my childhood and what happened that night and what happened to me and how I got so sick and had a marriage that also ended up in a disaster. And then I left this country and ended up backpacking for 3 years, staying in the forests and mountains with old people and starting to find a way to understand what truth is. And it takes me to a place where now I talk about these principles of being human. So it looks like a thick book. It's 400 pages, but it's a story that once people start reading, they cannot put it down. It's Dr. John DiMartini. He wrote the blurb for my back, on the back cover, and it's helped to make the book a bestseller, obviously. So I'm very grateful for the fact that it took me 10 years to write that book. The second one is going on for the last 13 years now, but I had to go through many things to find answers to write. every word in the book, every word I speak is what I live. I have to find a way to live it and then write it and speak it and become it. So I always knew a long time ago when I was suffering in those early days, when I was lying on the floor and in pain and misery and wanting to commit suicide, I would scrape myself off the floor just to make it through the day and tell God, please God, one day all I want to do is to stand up somewhere and speak. And there's only one thing people must tell me. That makes sense. And I thought in a world of nonsense, if some of us can make sense, it would be of tremendous value. So earlier on as well, I knew I would write 3 books. I knew the title of the book well before I could even know what I'm going to write in that book. First one being human. I had to turn my lifeblood into ink to write the story of that. Second one, Mother Earth, Father Sky, a story of timeless intimacy. I had to turn my tears through all the heartache in my brain and my heart. The trauma in my mental, emotional state to write that. And while I was going through the trauma recently to write the second book, which I'm hoping to complete within a year, I had a deal with God and I said, please God, the third book, I know the title, it's called Buddha, the Christ. I don't know yet.
Sorry, friends. See, he's reconnecting. So let's. It still have a few more questions to with him. Even though some of you guys feel it's taking long, or I'm not asking any questions, but he's sharing an individual sharing is a personal journey, personal life drama and life situations or anything challenges story, personal story. So I don't want to interfere, and then I don't want to cut in the middle of the flow, right? It is not really good thing, because it's kind of a healing when they come and then they are sharing their personal story, especially specifically their father's memories or their early days. So it is really you know uh, so he cannot actually reconnect. So anyhow, thanks a lot, friends, for watching, and then I will bring him on other topic, and then we will discuss more. Thanks a lot for watching, and then his journey is very, very remarkable. And as you can see, even if you guys are watching or listen for even a couple of minutes, it's really great. And then I will get the link, I will post the link of how you can get his book. And also, for your information, whoever is watching, that is every Sunday from 10 to 10:30, just 30 minutes, sometimes a little bit more. So you can come and share your life journey with us, with everybody. It doesn't matter who is going to judge you, or don't even think about, okay, you know what, how the society or how other people going to think about my story, or, something like that. Don't even think about it, or you don't need to really um, think too much, prepare, right? So even ladies or women, you can come and share the life stories. And on Wednesdays I do it in Tamil, from 7:30 to 8 o'clock, just for half an hour, in Tamil. On weekdays it's Canadian time. And also on Thursdays, sorry, on Saturdays from 8:30 to 9 o'clock in the evening in English. So that's what I do. So open up, and also Billy, it's called I. So please continue your support, and we will meet on the next episode. All right. Thanks a lot, and see you, everyone. Thank you.